Everyone, welcome back to But Why Tho Reviews, and this week we are talking about Creed 3. As always, I am Kate, editor-in-chief over at But Why Tho, as well as the film, TV, and anime lead. I am happy this is the intersection of anime and film, just going to say that right now, and I'm here with Swara.
Hello, hello. I am so happy to be back. Love that it's becoming more of a regular thing, and I'm very excited to discuss Creed 3.
To kick things off, we're gonna do a quick synopsis because this is the third in a trilogy. So here we go. After dominating the boxing world, Adonis Creed, played by Michael B. Jordan, has been thriving in both his career and family life. When a childhood friend and former boxing prodigy, Damien, played by Jonathan Majors, resurfaces after serving a long prison sentence, he is eager to prove that he deserves a shot in the ring. The face-off between former friends is more than just a fight. To settle the score, Adonis must put his future on the line to battle Damien, a fighter who has nothing to lose. And also serves as Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut, which is exciting. So first things first, Swara, what were your expectations coming into Creed 3?
So I saw Creed 2 a few years ago. I overall really enjoyed it. I was really excited for this to see Jonathan Majors in an antagonist role again. Um, and I had higher expectations than what the previous one we discussed, which was Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania. I was just like excited, for Michael B. Jordan, Tessa Thompson, these amazing actors, and to see what Michael B. Jordan had in store. Like, as we've discussed, he said he was incorporating anime influences into his directorial vision. I was excited to see how he would implement that. I was just, again, also really excited for really powerful performances, which straight off the bat, I'll say that that's what we got in this film.
Yeah. And I think for me, like I don't like the Rocky films. I don't like, this is weird. So I grew up with boxing. If you're listening to this, you may or may not know, but Mexicans love the sport of boxing. Not only is it something that's really important to our culture, but it's something that we have helped shape. And so growing up, like everybody always watched the Rocky movies, but for some reason I was like, why would I watch a Rocky movie? I could just go watch Jesse James Leija. Like I could just go watch the thing. And I watched one of them for a Patreon review and I was like, this is fine. I'm like, it's not bad. It's still just not my jam. And then I watched Creed 2 on a plane and I was like, oh my God, this is good. I need to go watch the other one. And then I watched Creed 1. And so coming into Creed 3, I was really excited. And I think a lot of it was because in each subsequent installment, it seems like the story is getting, it got less detached from Rocky and more focused on Adonis Creed. But even more specifically, it seemed more and more like the story that Michael B. Jordan was wanting to tell versus a story that he had to tell. And I think that's what I was expecting, and it's what we got, which I was really excited about.
Yeah,
Um
absolutely. Yeah. No, I think like it's exactly that. I think Creed 2 is sort of the transition for that when Rocky was like, dealing with his own stuff, but really it's about Creed, Adonis Creed coming into his own. And in this, we don't even have Rocky. It's really just Adonis Creed. There may be a mention of Rocky here and there, but this really has become his own story.
yeah.
And I really do think in the way that Michael B. Jordan in his directorial vision and as the leading man, as Adonis Creed, like he really took hold. And I
Yeah.
think Michael B. Jordan's a really talented, gifted actor, and I think that he really shined here.
Yeah. I think so moving into the good, I think that the performances were really well done. And I think that there was a focus on fighting as this driving storytelling element. There's this fight he has early on in the film with Tessa Thompson. I forget her name in the movie, but she's his wife, and their daughter gets into a fight and she's yelling at him like, you can't do this. Like, you can't teach her to fight. You need to teach her to talk about her feelings. You can't just fight it out. And he responds to her by saying, well, sometimes they do. Like, she says you can't solve your problems by punching them in the face. He responds to him by saying sometimes they do. And I got like, the movie is kind of encapsulated in that, because for me, and I think that this is something that a lot of people may not realize about me, but I used to box like when I was a kid. Like, my grandpa put me in there as a way to channel aggression because you can talk about your feelings. It doesn't mean that you don't still need an outlet for them. And then from boxing, I went into sports and those types of things. Now I lift very heavy weights when I'm angry, but the way that that one fight encapsulates what happens between Damien and between Adonis is really important, because there are some fights, there are some arguments that you cannot calmly solve. Like, you have to throw it all out on the table. And for these men fighting and boxing, and I want to say fighting because he also points out in the film, like, a lot of people think that boxing is violence. It's not violence. It's control and it's a dialogue. And I think that that is something that the film gets across very well, is using your body and using your physicality to solve the problems around you. And yeah, I don't know how you felt. I felt like that was very
Oh yeah,
important.
I felt that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go
I
ahead.
felt completely the same. There was a real artistry in the fights and the angles that the camera was directed on, and how keenly one fighter or another would like find a weak point in the other fighter and like punch
Yes.
there like on the rib or on the face. Even though as I understand, that's not allowed, but you know what I mean. It's just like there's just like so much visual richness uh in that cinematography, and just like again, I gotta give my hats off to Michael B. Jordan, like really great directorial vision there, and the cinematographer, whoever they were on the film.
And I think that that also brings me to my other point. I don't know. I think that Creed is a film that can be enjoyed if you don't know anime and haven't watched it. I think that if you watch shonen anime, you get something out entirely different from the film in like an even better way. And for me, like the way that the fights were shot, like they were shot like a shonen sports anime. They were shot like No Ippo. They were shot like Megaloblocks. They were shot by focusing on the body and focusing on how it moves and how it reacts to something being punched. The very first fight, there is a punch from Dragon Ball in it. Like, it is all of these small moments where, like, if you don't know it, you don't see it, but when you do, you actually understand that Creed 3 is like a love letter to shonen rivalries. Like, that's what this is. This is a shonen rivalry in a Creed movie as a part of the Rocky franchise.
So Damien is Bakugo.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I think Michael B. Jordan meant for him to be Sasuke, but it also works with that, because like there is an understanding in shonen rivals, and this is something that is really important, I think, for anime as a whole, is the way that Japanese storytelling tells stories of teamwork and heroics is different than how Americans do. It maps easily onto underdog stories, but there's a bigger focus less on fighting and evil. Like, you have your outside villain, but then you always have your protagonist, your shonen protagonist, balanced out by their rival. You have it as somebody who is just as capable as them, but carries some sort of chip on their shoulder, often in relation to the protagonist, and how they communicate, very literally fight with each other and push each other in different directions to grow, is one of the key touchstones and like important pieces of the shonen rival archetype. And I think that it's something that this film lives in, because it never wants you to hate Damien. It wants you to understand why Damien is doing what he's doing because of the relationship and the way the film resolves. Like, they had to fight it out like Bakugo in season 3 to finally get the mutual respect and realize that like it wasn't anybody's fault. And we won't spoil who won, but like, you have to do that. And that's
Yeah.
how it's done. And I don't know what you felt, but I felt that like that was probably the most beautiful thing about it.
Hmm.
Because I think people, when they hear anime, they're like, it's gonna be something weird and completely different, and it's like, well, no, it's just a
Yeah.
different way to present the same archetypes that we see.
Yeah, and in the performances, especially Jonathan Majors, who is an absolute tour de force in this film, it's about evoking that sympathy for him and what he's been through as like I was gonna say a dark-skinned black boy in America and dealing with police, like
Mhm.
brutality, etc., and like what he has to endure, along with Adonis Creed, who also like deals with that. It's just it feels so resonant. It doesn't like I think it's like it's not in your face about it. It's just that like this is the groundwork for which he comes back like later on in life to like
Yeah.
meet up again with Creed and to try to get into boxing without giving too much away, it's just in Jonathan Major's performance, there's a real desperation. And even though like initially he may not be the best guy coming back into Creed's life, there's still you still empathize and sympathize with him. Even when he was doing like I'll just say like some bad shit, like I didn't feel like any sort of resentment of him. I'm like, I understand where this is coming from. I understand why you're doing this. I understand not just like 18 years of your life were taken away, but your pride was fundamentally
Yeah.
broken and how you're trying to regain that. um he saw Creed like living out like the life that he wanted, and it just like it that anger, that like real extreme frustration that like keeps building up in him and causes
Yeah.
him to do these things, and you completely understand him, and that's to the credit of Jonathan Major's incredible amazing performance,
Yeah.
not like that other movie we discussed.
Well, and
And I
it's
just
such a
gotta say,
calm
yeah,
performance.
yeah,
It's tempered but
absolutely.
powerful.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that like there is a clear vision. Like Michael B. Jordan directed him. Like it was a great meeting of the talents here that
Yeah.
is just like so enriching and so engaging to watch. I mean, and again, this isn't like an MCU movie. This isn't like a big screen like sci-fi fantasy, even though I love those. This was like a real grounded, amazing set of performances that keeps you gripped as you're wondering who's going to win or like how this is going to go in
Yeah.
one way or another. And I just like this was so refreshing to watch after Quantumania. I'm like, this was like a huge palate cleanser. I need to
Yeah.
watch Jonathan Majors in something great, and Creed 3 delivered on that.
And I think that that comes from like the ability and the chemistry that Michael B. Jordan and Majors had of being able to not just show a relationship but to show a strained relationship consistently, because that's really the key to understanding this space that they're both occupying, is that Majors never looks comfortable. It doesn't matter if he's in the ring the first time he steps into Adonis's ring, the first time he's in Adonis's house, the party that he goes to, every piece of who Dame is not comfortable in the position, and you know that it's a whole bunch of compounding factors. It's because he knows that he's an ex-con. It's because he knows that he should have been here, and prison shouldn't have been in the cards for him. And being able to carry that in your performance in every scene is such a tall task, but to be able to do that in a way that reacts to your protagonist and have your protagonist feed off of it, because in those same scenes Adonis doesn't look comfortable because he feels guilt. He sees him and he remembers the past that he left. And i don't I don't know if a lot of people have this. I assume a lot of people have this experience, and like I have it on a very minuscule scale. But like I grew up in like the courts. Like I grew up in like in in not good conditions. I grew up extremely poor. And there's a piece of you that when you leave that, and when your career takes you outside of where you used to be, it's not that you purposefully want to get rid of it. It's that sometimes it's easier to forget. And you have Adonis say that in one of his conversations where he's like, I didn't mean to do it, but it was just easier than confronting it. And I think that there's a lot going on in the movie that both of the men really sell, that I don't think you get if they didn't throw themselves into it the way that they did. I think they worked on crafting a brotherhood and all of the pain and the trauma that really comes with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's just like sold in these amazingly riveting performances that convey so much simmering emotion, not over the top. It's just there's so many subtleties, especially
Yeah.
with like again, Jonathan Majors, like, oh, he's so good.
So
And
good.
it's just like I've been thinking about this recently. Like we've been having this conversation. There's been this wide conversation about movie stars. Are they really there anymore? And part of the movie star is someone who can like audiences want to see. And I think Jonathan Majors is really building that up for
Yeah.
himself, which I feel confident to say like he is become it. Yeah, he's already become a movie star. I'm really happy for him and want to see him in more things.
Yeah, I think one of the other pieces to touch on the anime bit a little bit, like I saw so much. And this is also where like I don't think this movie is perfect. I have a few large issues with it, but what I do appreciate Michael B. Jordan doing is he just very loudly said subtext is for cowards. I'm gonna tell you everything. There's a
Yeah.
phenomenal scene where the crowd drops out, and it is just Dame and Adonis fighting in the ring, and you see them exchanging blows, and you can see that like what I loved about the finale and the final fight between the two, which we all know was coming, so it's not a spoiler. Um, is that they're not happy. They're not happy to be beating on each other. There is a sense of harming somebody and knowing that like you're doing it because you're working out something else. And I think that that's one of the like, it's not something that it's not to say that American films don't do this, but this is very clearly the pivotal point in a shonen anime, whether it's sports or otherwise, where your rival and your protagonist have to finally handle their dynamic and figure it out. You have it with Vegeta and Goku. You have it with Sasuke and Naruto. You have it with Bakugo and Deku. There is always that pivotal episode or two-parter where it's just about beating the crap out of each other. And it starts out fun. It starts out with, I'm gonna shit talk them. I'm gonna knock them out. I'm gonna do this. And then slowly you realize that the other person is learning about the way the other person feels in the fight, and it stops being something that you're happy to fight about and starts being something where like you're working out those emotions in a silent way, but in a way that like the outcome of this fight will reflect, everything
Yeah.
passing.
Yeah, it's about letting your emotions drive your body in such a way that feels so cathartic, and
Yeah.
engaging with this person you have like this history with, and these this unchecked trauma with,
Yeah.
really, and letting that play out in the screen. Again, it was beautifully done. There's one like scene, I don't want to spoil it, but where again, like, oh yeah, like you mentioned it, like where the audience like fades out and it's just like
Yeah.
it's just the two of them, and it's brilliantly done. I love the visual languages in this film so
Yeah.
much.
I also like the last shout out I want to give before we move into some stuff that could be better is Felix. It was amazing to finally see a Mexican fighter in a boxing movie because we built this sport in a very specific way, especially in California. So it was really cool to see him there. The Jaguar. He was really cool. He was a punk. It's fine. It's whatever. I'll watch him in more stuff, especially because like is really small, but Selena Sleva, like
Love
being the
her.
mom who is like, get up, what are you doing? And her son's like bleeding, and she's like, no. That's what like my parents did, like in a sporting match. Like I got concussed during a game one time, but my dad didn't realize it, and he was just yelling me to get up, and then he was like, oh no, and then he like ran to the field. But like that's like I don't know, it's the mama, the Latina mama energy that where it was really awesome to see that. It's something really small, really dumb, but it's one of those things that like I feel like this movie better represented like what boxing looks like, especially in places like California or Texas. That I really appreciated. It's a very conscious choice too. The choice to use sign language, the choice to use Spanish, the choice to show life in a way that is different than what we usually see. So
Yeah, I want to give a shout out about the deaf representation in this film. I
yeah.
think I've never seen anything like this in any big picture film before, and I think they nailed it. I know that they actually hired a deaf actress to play Amara, the daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and like just bravo. I know a few people in my life who are hard of hearing or deaf, and like I know they're going to appreciate this so much watching
Yeah.
it.
No, I agree. And the fact that like they like it was a family that just signed and they had a deaf daughter, and it wasn't like some large like statement. It was just we have a deaf daughter.
Exactly.
Like that's
And
it.
here's how we communicate. We
Carry
American
on
Sign
with the
Language.
day.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna teach her to fight. Like
Exactly.
so for on things that can do better, and I feel like I've talked a lot, so I'll kind of did you have any like large nitpicks with it?
Um, my positives definitely outweighed the negatives. I think you mentioned it, but the dialogue was a little like on point. There wasn't as many subtleties in the dialogue where there could have been. I will say, okay, yeah, I'll just go ahead and say this. Like the way like they incorporate the mom, Felicia Rashad's
Mhm.
character, into the plot, I think it was to be honest, it kind of felt out of place to me. I felt
Yeah.
like it was a bit jarring in parts, and I'm like, okay, what is this really adding? Did this need to happen like now? Was there a better way to do this? Did you really need to go this way with their character? I'm not even saying that as like, I wish you didn't do this. I'm just like, I'm legitimately wondering about like,
Mhm.
what does this add to the plot? How does this inform Creed's character? I thought, Tessa Thompson was great as always. But also some of her dialogue was very on the nose and maybe could have like
Yeah.
used some more subtlety. Um, Again, I love like the performance and the directorial vision. Like those are my standouts for me with this film, and like the action. Again, what I love about this film, the action was amazing. I love like these punches and just like the
Yeah.
the choreography of like these uh yeah, these fights. It was almost like a dance in a great way. But what I wish like this film had done better, yeah, I think it just comes down to some dialogue choices for
Yeah.
me, and like it just could have been more subtle. That's mainly what it is for me.
The funny thing is, I think that this has all of the best things and all of the worst things of shonen anime. And I say that to like back up your comment. In shonen, the protagonist and the rival have everything. And when their story is happening, nothing else matters. Everybody becomes a fly on the wall, has horrible dialogue, maybe shows up once, even though they should have had a bigger role. Like, and I think that like there's a lot of tunnel vision because I think that Jordan wanted to tell a very specific story. And you can see this in all of his choices, from the color choices for himself, for Adonis, and for Dame that replicate Naruto. You can see it in like the handshake that they have, which is also a Naruto reference. Like he had a very clear vision that he wanted to make this story of brotherhood and rivalry. But I think to that point, while that is strong, so much kind of feels tacked on, because as much as I
Yeah.
loved the stuff with him and Amara, like it
What
kind
does
of
it
just
add
goes, like it
exactly?
doesn't
Yeah.
add too much. He's a good dad. Okay. Is she gonna do more? Are we gonna get a spin-off where she's a boxer? Was that why you did this? Like there are just a lot of pieces that felt like we needed to have a plot point to impact the larger story, but we didn't need that to stand out too much. And I think that that overcrowdedness impacts a film that has just under 2 hours to run, because when you take off credits, it's about maybe what, hour 50, hour 45 of
Hmm.
actual movie time. um I think in addition, the CG is not good. And CG, what CG? What CG do you have in a boxing movie? Well, you have crowds. And
Yeah.
there is a very stark difference between how the cinematography and direction is handled in the past when they show the flashbacks. They're grainy and they're very visceral and they're very real. They feel very grounded and whole, and I think that those, like the flashbacks, shine in a way that I think really highlights the type of range that Jordan can have as a director. But the present day, and specifically in the fights, like there is a level of intimacy that gets removed when you add in the fake crowd, because you can see that there's like a friend described it as like a plastic sheen, like a different way that it looks in almost a fake way. And it takes a little while for the camera to move out from the large and move it into the intimate in the fight, and it gets there, but it's the transition in that feels really kind of awkward, because it doesn't necessarily match with the human story that you're seeing.
And that's an interesting, you know, thread that we've been discussing along with these big budget films of the usage of CGI, of
Yeah.
like how what does it really add to the story? Like, why do you need to have this? If you're going to do this spectacle, do it well. Do it in a way that really does help inform the characters and their dynamics better.
Yeah.
It just like I guess it's an industry-wide problem at this
Yep.
point, which is really unfortunate. I mean, but although like, as you said in your review of Avatar: The Way of Water, they kept doing it spectacularly well for what they needed to do for that film with their characters, but we're just not really seeing that with most of these other films,
Yeah. Well,
which
and
is,
that's the difference too, because Way of Water was like, no, it is CG first, animation, and I don't want to say just CG. Animation is important. and that is how we will tell our story. And I think you're right. I think a lot of these other large budget films or other large films in general are kind of just tacking it on. Like, this is the thing we have to do, but we have actors here, so like that's fine, versus like seeing it as an art form that has to be connected. They're kind of just putting it out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Tacking it on, not really putting much
Yeah.
thought into it. Just like, oh, this is a check mark because like oh, if we want our film to do well, it has to have some spectacle in it for like the
Mm-hmm.
audiences to come watch it, which, is like kind of depressing to me. I would just like want
Yeah.
audiences to like just wait for something on stream. Don't give your money to this because like it's
Yeah.
mediocrity in a lot of
Yeah.
instances. So
And I
yeah.
think for me, I think it took a lot. I think had Jordan not decided to make the crowd fall out, I think that there would have been a lot of intimacy that got left out of that fight that was really important. I honestly think that if you wanted to go full shonen sports anime, it should have been the ending that you didn't expect and still have the same conversation with the same resolution. And then it also should have been just them doing one on one in like a backyard or in like the gym that
Yeah.
like, because then like I understand the stakes and the need, and that part I think like having it be a title fight, like that goes into the larger mythos of Rocky and like the importance of like replicating Rocky and the underdog fight, which we get note of multiple times in the film, because he has to kind of complete that circle with his father Apollo. um but I think that the third act of the film, while I think there are really special things about it, knowing how much more you could have gotten if Jordan had leaned into those more Japanese ways of storytelling, where sometimes like a hero doesn't necessarily have to win, or sometimes it doesn't have to be a large venue. It can just be two people fighting in like the back of a school and you still have the resolution. I think if he had moved smaller away from the spectacle, you would have ended up with more impact.
Yeah, totally. And I think that feeds back into our critique about the writing and how a lot of it was very
Yes.
obvious and on the nose. If you
Yeah.
included more of those subtleties, if you had like, if it wasn't just like a clear contrast of like, this is what needs to happen, or like, this is
Yeah.
good versus bad, etc. It's just like, just build more up to it, I think. I think that
Yeah.
would have helped the film more. And along with cutting some of those extraneous details that didn't really help it.
Yeah.
There was a really great core there, but it could have been bolstered more.
Yeah, exactly. Now the training montage was amazing. That's one of the best training montages I
It was
have
great.
seen in a movie. I will say that. Yeah, do you have anything else positive or negative that you want to say before we wrap up?
Um, I'm just like thinking, I think this is like good conclusion to the trilogy. I think at certain points I was wondering, oh, like I kind of really hope there's not a Creed 4 because like they really, set it really well as a trilogy here. But no, it really did seem to close a definitive chapter on it. And I'm honestly like really excited for what Michael B. Jordan will do next as a director. I am interested in like seeing his films like or whatever else he wants to
Yeah.
direct. But yeah, like, Creed 3 is like really solid for me. So,
Yeah.
despite a few critiques. So yeah, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I think this also made me more excited for the Tom Clancy project that he's doing with Chad Stilinski. Because he already did Without Remorse, which is like the middest of mid movies, but he was just very happy to be attached to like a Tom Clancy action project. But he's gonna have Chad Stilinski, the director of John Wick, the second director and fight choreographer on Birds of Prey, like the man who has helped like turn the tide of Western action cinema, directing him, and I can't wait to see that partnership come through. So yeah, this has me excited for anything Michael B. Jordan's gonna do, and I'm hoping that what this does for fans of Jonathan Majors is that it helps them expand their understanding of who he is as an actor outside of Lovecraft Country, outside of just Creed. And I hope that they look back and dig into his filmography because he has been stunning. The Five Bloods is on Netflix. You can watch Gully. There are a lot of movies with him that really showcase the star power and the intimate emotion that he brings to his roles. titles, so you should go watch those. But Swara, do you think people should go watch Creed? Should they spend their weekend at the movies with them?
They absolutely should. It is so much more worth your money than Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania. I give this film a solid 8 out of 10. Like, go watch it, support it. I want more like this, please.
Yeah. And I'm sitting at a 7 out of 10 on my end just because of like the shonenness of it all. Like needed it to do a little bit more because I could tell he wanted to, and I could tell he dialed it back for like the traditional American audiences. But I think that the core of what it is very good. And I think that the story of it all is very good. So I think that if this is a franchise that you love, if this is just a movie you want to go see to break up what we're getting with everything else, I think that you should go watch it. Spend the 2 hours in the theater, get a nice popcorn, and just embrace it. I'm really excited, and I'm really excited to have more folks overtly talking about their anime inspirations instead of hiding them. Darren Aronofsky. But yeah. Swara, where can people find you on the internets?
Y'all can find me on Twitter at Spider Swars. I'm on Instagram at Swarzy_8. I'm a freelance writer, having written for But Why Tho, Nerds of Color, The New Arab, IO9, and other websites. And I have a podcast called The Middle Geeks on the Hard Knock Life Nerds of Color podcast network, where my co-host May and I discuss anything and everything in Middle East and North African representation. So check us out there.
Awesome. And you can find me at Randir on Twitter. If you want my anime and manga takes, you can get them on Instagram, where that's all it's dedicated to with the same handle, Randir. And if you want to keep up with our work, head over to butwhytho.net and check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/BUTWHYTHO. Thank you. And yeah, go to the movies, guys. Go to the movies.